Welcome back, everyone, to Dynamic Character Productions. I am your host, Alex Trias. We are covering episodes 10, 11, and 12, the finale of Iririki Island, and I'm here with two great guests, both members of the production team. One, the future host of the next long game, Monte Carlo, Ian Moorhead. Ian, how are you doing? What are your thoughts on the season so far?
I'm doing good, Alex. It's good to be here. Always good to be talking DCP. The season, I think if you watch Exile, it's always easier for me to relate to a season that I hosted. This entire game reminds me of just the rounds where Zucker and Mackenzie were booted in Exile. Like, this season was just a complete fucking mess. And watching it while it happened, I was just watching this season live. I was like batting my head against the wall. And then watching it back in episodes, it was so entertaining. So I think the next time we get sort of like a messy season, it'll be easier for me to digest it while we're watching it live, because then I know in episodes it's just going to come out like this one did. So yeah, it was a great watch back.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a whirlwind of the season, to say the least. And our other member today, he was on Exile Island, became member of production, leader of our social media team. We got Greg Langstine. Greg, how are you? What are your thoughts on the season?
I'm good talking with you guys. Thoughts on the season? I actually thought it was a pretty good season. It was definitely a slow burn. The merge was frustrating at times, watching the WOTA team just really blow it. They just really couldn't get it together for any of the challenges, and I think Dak had an easy break on that first challenge with the medevac, the unfortunate medevac, but they came back strong, and they made up majority of the merge, and they started to crumble on themselves a little bit. And then like the end game was a little bit of a will they won't they with Garret and JS. Like, can they make it to the end being in a 2-7 minority at the merge? So I thought it was a really fun season, and I'm excited to talk about the end game.
Oh yeah, so we left off last time on the recap with the JS getting wheeled out, and everyone's sort of like, what's going on here? Who was the vote? We find out it was JM who voted for Bill because he thought he wanted Bill out so that he could have two pairs on either side, and they would be able to potentially pick which side gets to go to the end game, and hopefully brings them with them. But JM has other ideas of what they want to phrase this as, which is the entirety of this like 27-minute episode, is them trying to cover it by saying, oh, I did this to protect Bill in the event that Garret played an idol, but Bill would have went home. Yeah.
It was a bit of a confusing, the move, I guess I understand the intention a little bit, but the explanation really kind of fell short. I'm not really sure what they were going for there, saying that they were trying to save their alliance, even though that would have meant that themselves and what happened. They went to Rocks, and JM put himself up for a pretty scary time there, potentially. I mean, wound up on the positive side of it, but it might not have gone their way.
Yeah, I feel like looking back at that like sort of decision made at the final six, it's kind of like they originally thought like, oh, maybe I will get to be the third to the pair that goes to the final three, which like is fair. That's like a decent strategy when you're not aligned specifically or in a majority specifically going into the final five. But everything that came after that just like made that like positive reasoning for it kind of just like drift away slowly down the river. And yeah, it's very confusing. But I love nothing against JM, nothing against anybody who's ever played. Nothing I love more than seeing a bad decision happen and then that person being the follow-up to that bad decision. Yeah. I think it's just so fitting for these kind of games.
Poetic. Yeah.
Well, yeah. There's poetry in it of like, oh, not me getting punished for my own decision making, but like
immediately too.
Right, immediately. And it was a blindside for them when they ultimately do go out. I keep thinking back on it, and the more that I think about it, the more JM knew there was going to be 2 votes on Bill, but regardless, there's nothing wrong with being that 4th vote on Garret. Garret leaves. Your biggest competition in a lot of people's minds just went out the door. You have the pair that you believe of Celestina and Brett. You can still tag on to them and get rid of JS and Bill there, who aren't a duo. And so like there's other avenues, but I just think ultimately JM just had this idea in their head. They wanted Bill out. That would allow them to have Celestina to themselves, but it didn't pay off. So like we get through the challenge. It's step by step before anyone can really blink. Garrett's won, and it's oh no, Garret was supposed to go out this round finally. Nope.
If only he could have went out at final 6.
I know. If only there was, or final 7, or final 8,
or final 8,
or final 9, or final 10.
Yeah,
it's like there's all these opportunities to get rid of Garret, and now everyone's sort of just looking at each other like, "Damn, we played ourselves."
Well, go ahead, Greg.
Sorry, I was going to say, in fairness to Garret, and I don't know how many people really bought into his fake idol, shenanigans, but it worked. It clearly put people, like, made people a little bit more afraid. Like, they didn't want what happened to James at the very beginning of the merge to happen to them, and just kind of go out with some poor luck. So I mean, I understand the fear. I think Garret played it very well, and it was to his benefit, clearly.
Yeah,
and he pulled out the challenge wins when he had to.
I think like this shows that like if you come to play a mini, like come to play to the point where like your game is not over until McKenna says like you're this number on the jury and shows your name for the last time, because Garret is dead in the water. He is at what was that with the Blues Clues Idol, final 9?
That's like final 10 on
okay. So final 10, he's dead in the water. Like there's no reason he should be in the game any longer. And he just continues he pulls off one move, and here he is now at final 5, winning immunity with a chance to possibly win again at final 4 and go to the final 3. I mean, especially in a mini where people don't have time to, like truly dissect what you're saying. You just have to try something. There's no point in just, putting down your sword and waving the white flag in one of these games. In a long game, trying something, I don't know, it might rustle with some relationships you've made, or like people, if it makes no sense, like the Blues Clues Idol, then like people in the game might have time to, figure
There's
out.
time to think about it and like be like, no, this is BS. But when you've got such a short time period in between voting rounds and the challenges, and you're getting pulled for confessionals and you're scrambling around the different rooms, like it is hard to keep it all together. So you can throw out something like that and have it stick.
Yeah, and like the most important thing of these harebrained schemes of the Blues Clues Idol is you don't need everyone to buy it. You just need to have 1 or 2 people have some doubt of, oh, this could actually be real. And and JM was someone who had to play with that doubt in their mind that maybe this is real. Whereas Brett and Celestina, like eventually, like the first time they're like, okay, maybe this is real. But then after that, like, I don't think so. But at this point, we don't need to worry about it. Because they eventually do try to vote Garret out. Bill tries to vote out Garret. So it just doesn't work out. But it's because you have JM believing in it that it becomes more real. And like to go over some of the hijinks later, because we do see ultimately is it going to be JM or Bill? Garret is dead set, like Bill's the person that he needs gone. But this is where Brett starts to take a little bit more control. And you see him in confessional, and ultimately when he's voting JM out, say the move here, even though I don't see JM as a threat to my end game, the issue is no one sees that, and I need Garret to not think of me at final 4 as who to go. So I need to get everyone else to vote out JM, because then that protects me, it protects Celestina, and Bill's the target or Garrett's the target.
Yeah, this is the best move in the history of our channel and our games. When you've reached the final 5, most people just think like, who's the biggest threat overall? Like, and Garrett's not able. So like, you would just assume that Brett goes with Bill, because I mean, right now, take the shot at Bill, why not? But just the vote on JM and the reasoning for doing so is just, it's genius, for lack of a better word. I mean, it really helps propel him to the end game that he gets. It's so good.
It was very intentional too,
Yeah.
like very well thought out. It wasn't just like, I don't like JM, or I'm not working well with them, or whatever. Like, it wasn't some silly emotional vote out. They thought very strategically about what would get them that extra step further. And like, that's the kind of gameplay that gets you the win, clearly.
And again, this decision is made in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, this is made in 20 minutes with someone who's been drinking copious amounts of wine for 10 plus hours now. Yep. And you look at it, and you also know there's so many different strategic reasonings why he's making this decision. And one of them also is he's been making it very clear, I have no votes cast against me. Like, if I vote out JM here, in theory, if either like Garret or Bill don't win, all the votes should be focused on Garret and Bill. I can get the final 3 with no votes cast against me. That's another thing I can say, because he is thinking about endgame. He is thinking about what moves and what things he can claim to the jury that help get him the win. And because he's very confident that if he can get to the end, and with pretty much any of them, except maybe Garret, he has a chance to win the game. And ultimately, we see it pay off. He gets Celestina, who knows JM outside the game, to vote out JM, partially due to some confusion on her part about a tie vote potentially happening at Final 5, which isn't impossible. It's just extremely unlikely.
If she threw a vote on Brett, then it would have been a 2-2-1, and it would have been a tie. So, but you're right. I think there was definitely some confusion, because it wouldn't have made sense for anyone in any situation to do that. But it was surprising, I thought, especially in hindsight, seeing how that JM and Celestina had to have a pre-game relationship just through, I think, their patron community.
Right.
But that it was kind of impressive that Celestina voted out JM, where it seemed like the two of them could have worked together long term. Perhaps she was banking on putting him on the jury to get a vote from him at the end, which, I mean, that actually did pay off for her. But it was curious, because I almost saw JM as the clear person that she would need to sit next to at the end to get the win. I thought Brett and Garret were tough for her. I think she could have had a good argument against Bill, but JM kind of seemed like the clear path to her win, from my perspective.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we pardon me, I'm maybe giving Celestina too much credit here, but I'm going to give her due, because she does get to the end. Part of me, like, in my mind, I'm like Tom. I'm hoping Celestina's thinking like this when she's going and voting out JM. It's her Sandra moment, voting out Rupert for the second time. Like, I'm voting you out, and you're still gonna vote for me at the end, type of deal.
Yeah, I think Celestina, and again, I don't know if this was her thought process, but I do think this was the right move for her, even though she does have the best shot against JM in the end game. The odds of that being the pairing, and the fact that she didn't know was a final 2, I just think that this was a move for Brett, and it's also a move for her to switch off the relationship and like just vote him out. And then maybe if she can make another solid move at 4, or if it goes to fire making, she can win that. I mean, she starts to really, I hate the phrase, but she starts to really pad her resume towards final tribal council. So.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, so ultimately we see JM go out in a 3-2 vote. 3 votes on JM, 2 votes on Bill. Garrett's won the votes on Bill, but it's Garret sort of more so also playing for the jury at that point, or for JM. So in the event that Garret can get to the end, because he's like, hey, I can at least claim I wasn't one of the votes to send them out. But that JM becomes the 5th member of the jury, 10th person voted out. Our final thoughts on JM, I'll start from someone who was supposed to be out first, was given godsend by a situation that caused Connor to have to leave the game. You cannot say they didn't make the most of their opportunity. Getting up to 5th place is commendable, especially as be in that type of hole. and then just work and work and work. And you cannot claim that JM did not put work in.
Agreed.
Yeah, definitely. They played the game hard, and it was fun to watch.
Yeah, but that leads us to episode 11. It's Endgame. It's been fun. Quotes by Bill, and Bill's going out for the second time in DCP history. Bill's torch gets snuffed, but it's ultimately we have the challenge is shake, rattle, and roll. Garret beats that as well with the dice and putting them on top of the pencil. Mm-hmm. He's good, and everyone's just like, oh shit. And Brett and Bill immediately eye each other like, well, it's been fun.
Yeah, one of us.
Yeah, and then there's that like clip in the episode about like, oh, maybe it's Celestina. I just like fast forwarded through that today. I was like, come on, you guys.
Yeah, you can't come in and immediately go, okay, I'm voting for you, you're voting for me, and they go, oh well, we could get a tie and send Celestina. I'm like, that's not happening, guys. Come on.
Yeah, nice to consider the option, but wasn't happening.
I mean, like crazier things have happened. Like there's a harebrained scheme somewhere where you have Brett and Celestina voting for Bill and Garret coming together, be like, hey, let's like bygones be bygones. Let's put 2 votes in Celestina. Tie vote. Brett goes there.
Well, would that happen, or would it be fire making?
It would be fire making.
Oh yeah, it would be fire making, but like that's not how they were viewing it. Yeah, so I'm like, so part of me was like, let's have some chaos. Like I would have been totally down for a tie vote at that point because I was also like delirious from how long the game was going.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, but yes.
So, I wanna talk real quickly about Bill. Greg,
yeah.
Give us your thoughts on Bill's game, because you played with him in Exile for almost 10 days. So
yeah, I did play with him pretty closely in Exile Island, so I was really excited to see him back this season. I was very impressed that he survived 2 rock draws, and I guess by not having to actually be on the wheel at all in this case, that was really nice for me to see after his unfortunate demise in Exile. I thought he played the game really smart. I mean, he laid very low at the beginning. He was definitely a risk to be one of that first vote between himself or JM for that terrible challenge performance, but really came back. I mean, like got lucky with a sequence of challenge wins in the pre-merge, and then struck at the right time by getting that random group together to vote out Tom, and it worked out in his favor, even though Tom was an ally of his. So I think, at some point you do have to cut the people who you think can beat you at the end early, or else they might get too far. But I thought he played a good game. It definitely got tough at the end to see him actually see a path for him to get to the end. But in hearing his exit interview, he talked about how he could do a wall sit for significantly longer than how the wall sit lasted. So if he actually snuck into that final 3 and makes it to the end, and by winning that wall sit challenge, I mean, he does have a very strong argument to win. He has a good story, and that was pointed out by JM. I think at final 6 or final 5 is that Bill had a good story, and I think he did, and I think he played well. I think people like Bill. He's an absolutely lovable person. I don't think anyone would feel anything otherwise after speaking with him, even for a minute. So he was really fun to watch, and Bill could play on every season, and I won't complain. So
I think that's the consensus a lot of us have. But yeah, Ian, I also want to hear from your perspective as both someone who hosted him and now was a producer. You were helping with his confessionals for a lot of the game. I want to hear your perspective of the difference between what you got to see in the long game in Exile Island versus what we got to see here with an extended run in Iririki.
I really don't know if there was that much of a difference, really. I thought Bill in Exile was super smart. I thought that he read the game pretty well, at least from a strategical standpoint. Again, you have a lot longer time to meet for alliance meetups and stuff. I just think that Bill in Exile, he got the short end of the stick in rocks. He was never in the majority, but I feel like if he had made it to the merge, I feel like Bill is someone that the majority picks up. And also Bill is not going to sit there at the bottom of a majority alliance. Bill is going to go out and make things happen. But what I will say about Bill is if you are looking to play a DCP game, either a mini or a long game, I would go to Bill and ask him all kinds of questions about, not about our game specifically, but about like how to play, like strategy. I think Bill is one of the more seasoned minds that we have here, not just because of his age. Love you, Bill. But because he's played a lot of games, I think he thinks about the game a lot more thoroughly than some of the people we have play. I just think he's an excellent mind for the game. He reminds me of like someone that I think of in Real Survivor, like a Fishback, or that's just like how I think of Bill. I think I agree with Greg. I would take him on every season we ever had.
He's just really well-rounded. He competes in these challenges more than what you would expect. I mean, these
dice rolling,
a train wreck at some of the challenges, but you know what, that helps lower his threat level in a way. He is always connected socially, like, can have a good conversation with anyone, can get anyone to believe what he's saying. And, strategically he'll come up with some good ideas when he needs to. And then he's also just so fun loving. He always has his little catchphrase of like, it's a game, like he's not taking anything personally. He's here to have a good time. And I think people are attracted to that.
And I think that's something that should be anyone who plays in these games, not just ours, but any game. You need to have like a mindset like Bill, because there's a lot of people who take these games and stuff that happens against them way too personally, as if it's like an actual impact on their life outside the game. You need to understand it's a game. You're supposed to be having fun. You should not be getting yourself stressed out over nonsense. Have fun, take risks, like play the game how you truly want to play it, not just how you think you should be playing it. And that's how Bill plays. Bill's there to have fun. He's there to cause chaos when he wants to, but ultimately he's also there to win. So you get everything out of Bill, and I'm Bill's an all-star. Let's be real here. 11% voted out 3-1. And I will say this is probably one of the few mistakes Garret has in this game. I believe Garret should have caused the tie here. No matter what he thought about Bill, it was the fact that he was sort of had a blind spot on Brett.
But everyone did.
I know, that's what I'm saying. But it's still like as much as we're gonna praise Garrett's game, and it deserves to be praised, I think he should have took a step back, knowing that he was safe for these last 2 rounds, and truly looked at who was trying to push what, and see that it was Brett who was trying to be the one who's pushing now, after all these times of him being so reserved. Like, I don't want to say what I wanted to do, but if you're down for it, like, he was being a lot more direct now. So I would have been like, okay, I understand Bill's a threat. Let me hope that I can beat him in a physical challenge at Final 3. Let's tie it up. They do whatever the fire making challenge is, which I don't even know what our challenge was going to be. But, Bill has a shot to beat Brett there, and then you get rid of a big threat. We don't know what happens there at the wall set. Like, allegedly Bill would win, Garret still goes, and now it's Bill versus Celestina, and that's also a different debate. But we're not going down that rabbit hole.
Save that for the reunion.
Yeah, we'll save that for the reunion. And just another remark: if they actually want to do a true wall sit, you can't have your hands on your legs. That's my big dig on this next episode, which is the finale. Never say never. After Bill becomes 6-member jury, 11% voted out of the Iririki Island, we are going into, but on a hard idol, the wall sit, a staple of DCP for the final immunity challenge, at least in the minis. We do see Brett pull it off, which I was like genuinely surprised by, but like, having done a wall sit myself, like, I was nowhere close to winning in the game that I was. And I'm a relatively fit person, but I have bad knees. But in our thing, we had to have our hands up against the wall, palms to the wall. You could not touch your legs at all. Legs had to be around 90 degrees, like sort of like what we had. But here you see Brett and Garret able to, like, they get to keep rubbing out the muscles in their legs, help loosen it. These would go a lot faster if we didn't let them touch their legs. But hey, I'm not the host. I don't get to make those calls.
As long as it's even,
right.
for everyone, as long as everyone's following the same set of rules, as long as, it doesn't break the challenge if they can touch their legs. But I mean, I agree. I would like to see who could win done the right way. I mean, I think it would still.
I think ultimately it still ends up being the same thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Brett's form, and not to like get real deep in the critique of wall sits. I was really impressed watching Brett. I mean, Brett was like as 90 degree as you could be watching it back. I was really impressed. Even though he, he was giving himself a little quad massage every 15 seconds or so. But yeah, the wall sit challenge is always exciting, because not that Celestina had zero chance, but I think in most minis, like we come down, it's like, okay, who's going to win the wall sit, A or B? And then I think more often than not, I've been surprised at who's won the wall sit in these games, and I thought was going to win.
I did think going into it that Garret had it. I was like, oh, cool. This is a challenge for Garret. He's a very physical guy. Well, and so I thought that it was a layup for him. Yeah. And after, a bottle of wine, maybe 2 bottles at this point for Brett, but that might have helped him.
Yeah. So it's like, we're going in there and like, if you go just based off stereotype, you're stereotyping these people. Like everyone knew Celestina will say it herself, like she's not physical at all. That was not going to be her competition ever. Give her 100 times, she's probably in this, like going out first each time. Yeah. All love to her. You don't need to win everything. You don't need to be good at everything. Garret, the dude, like the dude bro, the coin of Exile Island term, versus Brett, who we wouldn't define as a dude bro and was drinking copious amount of wine. However, if you go by DCP logic, the fact that Brett drank wine during the mini was guaranteeing him the win in the wall sit, because what's weird about this in comparison to recent Survivor seasons, the winner of the final immunity challenge has won each of our first 3 minis. All of them won the wall sit. All of them drank wine. I'm just saying there's some
there's some
connections there.
So, Garret was drinking beer. He should have really been drinking wine.
Yeah. Are we saying that if you get to like final 5, that you need to like just start chugging, because at that point you realize you have to? So like, again, we want you to like be healthy when you're playing the game.
I am never encouraging it.
No.
I agree. Like, I just feel like at this point you have to. If someone is drinking, like if no one's drinking, maybe the variable's gone. But if one person is drinking, you got to hop on board, man. I mean,
or get them out.
Yeah. Or
vote out anyone who's drinking.
If you see someone with a wine glass or a wine bottle nearby, they're going home.
That's the winner. Yep.
Blood alcohol level is a factor in our games.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Hey, honestly, it can be a relaxer at some point. That could have just given Brett more of an edge, where the pain's there, but when you have some alcohol in your system, you don't feel the pain as much. But yeah, Brett wins. I was the person who had to do all the confessionals for. It was rough doing Garrett's confessional. He when you see him go back to Brett and he's still sitting there, he did not leave that position. Once he fell, that's where all of his confessional sword, that's where his conversation was with Brett and with Celestina. He knew at that point, once he fell and was not claimed the winner of the immunity challenge, he knew he was gone. It was a little heartbreaking to see, because it was him just like going through the 5 stages like in front of me. But true underdog story, if we ever had one on these in these games, down in the numbers, thought that he was going to be out pre-merge at one point.
Lost his closest ally to Rocks.
Lost his closest ally to Rocks.
Yep.
Just could not find a win, had to scramble, had to be creative, and had to be more forceful in his gameplay and more direct. He called himself the robbed king at final 3. It's hard for me to question that.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of like Mike Simmons in Exile. Like, I think they just that specific story is like super similar, where if Garret wins that final challenge, or if Mike wins the Fallen Comrades challenge, like they've won the game. And
Yeah.
it is hard to sit there and, they know that. So it's hard to sit there and watch them like muddle in the fact that they just gotta, I don't know.
I agree, but Garret, like, he went through his 5 stages of grief, but then he immediately got back up and was trying to make a pitch to get Celestina out. And, like, tough pitch to make, but he was making it to, like, with everything he had left in him. Is like, she's a very likable person. She played an incredible social game, which she did. Like, she had connections with everyone on the jury. Everyone likes her.
Mm-hmm.
If the jury is pissed that they've been playing this game for 12 hours and it's the end of the day and they just want to give it to someone that they like and think is a good person, not to say that Brett isn't, but like Celestina is the obvious pick there. And then it puts into Brett's head, like, what is this jury going to vote on? Like, are they voting based on gameplay and based on strategy, or are they going to vote with their emotions a little bit more, which could have been to Celestina's benefit? So it's a good pitch to make.
It's absolutely a good pitch to make. Like, ultimately, I think what drives Brett's decision here, even though we do hear him say, like, I would rather lose to Garret than lose to Celestina,
Mm-hmm.
but I think, and it's a correct read here, it's like he thinks, okay, if I bring Garret, it could probably end up being a 4-3 vote going either
Mm-hmm.
way, or Garret just wins in a landslide. Like, those are the two options.
Yeah.
If he brings Celestina and you base it off of how do you believe the jury will vote, it's how we see it end up. Like, it's either going to be like 5-2 or 6-1 one way or 6-1 the other. So I think in his mind, he's like, ultimately, I feel the people that I worked with are going to vote with me. I think Garret, or like the WOTA people, will respect me. And that's what, like, the knowing, and I think that was the accurate read, because like when you have people like JS on there, like JS, lovely person, but I think he's there to vote for who he think played the best game. Like, so not everyone's going to do that. Every jury member has their own criteria, but ultimately, as we hear from Brett, as he's voting for Garret is too threatening, and I'm not in the mood. So Garret goes out in a vote of 1-0, 12th person voted out, 7th and final member of the jury of Iririki Island, robbed king. He joins our robbed Giadases of DCP. It's good company to have. When you have people like Morgan and Mike Simmons. Like,
I have a question. Is this the first like fake idol we've had? Is like the Blues Clues idol the first fake idol, the first successful fake idol?
I believe it's the first actually attempted where Garret creates Garret creating the backstory using relevant information that did happen during challenges. I will consider it the first fake idol of DCP history.
Because it didn't necessarily exist, where like in Exile, Lauren tried it a couple times where like stuff she found, she created a different story, but the advantage still existed. So I think I would agree. Like this is like the first fake, first true fake.
Like he just pulled it out. He made it up entirely himself. Like took the beads from the flag and the string from the bags.
Found some paint from the merged flag. But Garret, congratulations, Garret. You have made history. You are always going to be a impact on DCP moving forward.
And he's got Garrett's an all-star. I think. I mean, he played the most successful. You can make a very compelling Garrett's story, really. It was like this. It was, can Garret make it to the end? Because if he does, it's almost secured that he would have won.
Yeah. I have a question for both of you. If JM doesn't go wacky at final 6 and votes Garret out, so that leaves JS still in the game. Does JS make it farther than Garret? Does JS have a better chance of making it to the end? Because then there's no Brett move at final 5, so Brett's game is a little lessened, and also there's no decision for the final 5 for Brett there, because Garret isn't going to be going after Bill at the final 4 because he's not there. So what do you guys think happens with JS still in the game?
So it depends how we think JS would do in that competition that Garret ends up winning at final 5, because Brett was right behind Garret. So it theoretically Brett wins instead of Garret winning at final 5. I think we see either Bill or JS go. So like I think ultimately the final three is JM, Brett, and Celestina. And then I think Brett probably does vote out Celestina there and brings JM to the end to get a in his mind a guaranteed win.
Yeah, it's interesting. JS could have actually won that challenge. I thought they competed well in challenges, and I think that they played a really smart game because they were really under the radar for a while. Garret was a perfect, and I don't know if it was intentional really, but it was a perfect shield for them because they were the duo, but Garret was clearly the more threatening of the two. And I think people got along with JS quite fine. I don't think he didn't have like this big standout, like, hey, look at me personality. So I think people are it's easier to kind of forget about him and let him fly under the radar, which clearly worked for him for a while. And I think if he didn't get rocked out, I mean, he really could have made a push to the end, which would have been exciting. But the Dak could have then looked at it. If Garret was the one out at 6, Dak could have looked at it and been like, all right, we got one of the Wodas out. We just need one last one. Like, come on, we got to do it. So I mean, JS probably would have had to win out a lot of those final challenges, which I think was possible for him, but certainly tough. So I think I agree with how your end game played out, Alex, with it being pretty similar, but with probably being JM, Brett, and Celestina in the final 3.
It's very interesting.
So I do see the win out. I also possibly see, now that we know Brett a little more, I see if JS wins that final 5 immunity, I could see Brett kind of villainizing the other people, like the other members of Dak that he's been working with, like those 4, and then kind of turn them against each other, maybe. And then, JS sneaks his way through another vote and then maybe wins. Yeah, I mean, those are the only, I agree. I really think that.
Ultimately, this all worked out for the best for Brett because we do know, also, if you listen to Bill's exit, like how early on Bill knew Brett was someone that he was going to need to deal with. So in a world where JS is there and JS wins immunity, I think we see that Bill and Brett war right then and there instead of waiting until 4.
That's a good point, especially if JM hadn't caused the tie at final 6, then Bill has less of a reason to vote out JM, because I think that was part of the reason. He was like, you voted for me, I'm going to vote for you. Like, I'll get you out if you're coming for me. So I agree. I think that would have worked. And you're right. Bill did start calling out Brett as someone to watch. I think it was either at the Tom vote or the Vinny vote, but Bill had the right read on it. I just don't know if he really was able to get anyone else on board with it. Because we mentioned earlier in this, Brett was on nobody's radar to get out. Up until that final 4, he didn't have a vote, which is crazy to me, considering I thought he was playing such a good game the whole time.
Yeah, this post-merge overall is something that we can all look back on it. Just there's so many different decisions that can be made that just completely upends this season and makes it go in a completely different direction. Even as far back as if Connor doesn't have to leave the game in the first vote, what happens? Do we see that train wreck from Woda throughout the pre-merge? We will never know. But we are moving forward. It's final tribal council. I'll give the 2 general speeches that Brett and Celestina had. Brett says he came in wanting to be social, didn't think that they would be good at challenges, but end up winning 2 challenges, including the final 3 wall sit. Was able to remove Garret from the game. His 2 main other votes were getting Tom and JM out of the game. Tom, because he saw Tom as a big threat and someone who would typically win these games, so needed to get rid of Tom then and there. JM, it was to create that shield and Bill so that's all Gary was focusing on instead of having to focus on him, which we all have said earlier in this podcast. The game-winning move, in our opinions, for Brett was that JM vote. Maybe the only thing that hurt him and this caused him to lose JM's vote, it was actively saying that JM wasn't a threat. JM wasn't he didn't see him as anything, because you have to know how people are going to respond to hearing how you truly view them in the game. I feel if he left that part out necessarily and just said, oh, I know Garret was focused more on Bill, so I had to get rid of JM there, I think there's a world where he could have potentially had a better chance of getting JM's vote. But overall, Brett has a good, I think, final tribal. Whereas Celestina, it's like she's here to have fun, never would consider herself like the strategist or anything, but did have some strategy, but used her charisma, being kind and funny, and being one of the very few women in the cast and the only woman to make the merge and being able to deal with the dynamics of just having to play with all men pretty much the entire game, and won a challenge. And even though she's like sort of a scattery and messy player, that can also deserve a win in some people's cases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Celestina's final tribal was actually pretty good too. I think if she went in there and was dishonest and like tried to say, she did all this strategy stuff and all that, like she would have gotten denounced very quickly by the jury. I think that the fact that she came in and was honest and like she was kind of playing as like she made it really far. She didn't really care too much if she won. Like she wasn't really concerned about winning the game. I think her final tribal presentation is very good. I don't think it lost her the game. No. I think that people still look at her, even though she gave like I'm not a strategist. People still look at her as like as a very good player. So yeah.
I mean, if she was dishonest, she may have gotten Tom's vote.
Yeah, maybe. I think that, yeah, I agree. I thought it was a good competitive final tribal council in terms of like how they pitched their cases and their self-awareness of their own games. Because I think that really is make or break with some people. If you're not owning up to the game that you played, people are just going to write you off. And so I think that they both evaluated their own games well. Obviously, Brett was able to explain some of the more concrete moves that he had, which was certainly more beneficial. I mean, Celestina did have that play about getting everyone on board to get Vinny out, which I think really did wind up progressing her game. So that was, a good pitch. I think Brett had a little bit more intention with like, I'm here to win and here's why. Whereas Celestina was like, here's how I made it to the end, which is very impressive, just not as impressive as the pitch that Brett was making. And just commenting on Brett's statements of calling JM maybe the lesser threat or someone that he didn't perceive to be as big of a threat. I mean, it wound up not being that bad since we do hear that JM and Celestina do have a relationship. So, it's kind of someone who is most likely going to be voting for your opponent anyway. It's fine to almost use them as that scapegoat of like, you can kind of say things about them knowing that you're probably not going to get their vote anyway. And maybe the things that you say about them are kind of expressing your perception of them can get others to agree with you because that's maybe how they saw the game as well. And that also earns some respect from the jury members in Brett's favor.
Yeah, for sure. And ultimately, we do see a payoff for Brett. Brett is the winner of our third season of Iririki Island by a vote of 5-2. He gets the votes from James, Tom, Vinny, JS, and Garrett, whereas Celestina gets 2 votes from JM and Bill. It was a good outcome for the season. I commend both of the final 2 who they did there. It was one of those final tribals where I don't think anyone actively said anything that cost them votes. It was just, this was how it was going to be. We have.
You think there's any surprises? Like were any of the jury votes a surprise to either of you two?
Only one for me was Bill, but I also understood Bill's logic there. Like I think he had a better relationship in the game with Celestina than he did with Brett.
Yeah.
And also, it could have been one of those switches where he knew Brett was most likely winning, but he wanted to show Celestina, like, you did not play a bad game, and this is my vote to help show you did play a good game and a game that deserves votes to win.
Yeah, and I think Bill votes definitely with some strategy, but I think he votes with emotion. He votes for the person that, he wants to see win just by giving someone that he likes the win. Not to say that he doesn't like Bill, or Brett rather, but I agree. I think he had a closer relationship with Celestina in the game.
Yeah, for sure. Which now we're getting to the end of this podcast, but you can't end the podcast without some MVP picks. For the last 3 episodes from Final 5 through the end of the game, I have a feeling I know where it's going to go, but we each are going to pick one more MVP. I'm going to tally it up, and we'll have our ultimate MVP of Iririki Island. So I'm going to start with Greg. Who was your MVP for the last 3 episodes of Iririki?
Yeah, so it really it's close between Brett and Garret, but it really has to go to Brett. He won the that final immunity challenge when he really did have to. He had that great move at the final 5, and he had a really strong argument at the final tribal council of why he should win. Garrett's close. He had a lot of good plays, but I think that there's maybe 1 or 2 things he could have done like a round or 2 leading up to it that maybe could have put him in a better position. So yeah, no, for me, it's got to be Brett.
Mm-hmm. Ian, who's your MVP?
Yeah, I hate to double up, but yeah, I'm going with Brett too. I think he played the most impressive game we've ever had in one of our games, whether that be mini or the long game. Yeah, I'm just from like final 9 on, Brett's game is borderline perfect. I really don't think he makes any mistakes, which means that like the relationships he built on early on are also like great and also could be borderline perfect. I just think his game is fantastic. Not to say he's the best player we've ever had, but he played the best game we've ever had on the channel. It's so good. Every move he made, he was able to provide reasoning before and after of why he did it. And I just think having that awareness to like kind of put your moves in concrete is just something that a lot of people are either scared to do because they think like the move will go wrong, or like just don't have the wherewithal at the time to understand why the move they're making is wrong or right. So yeah, Brett is the MVP.
He has like this ability to be very direct, but then have like the funniest laugh follow whatever he said. So you don't take it like offensively, or, you don't take it the wrong way. Yeah. He's just like a very affable person who I think, I agree. Just continuing to echo what Ian said.
Brett's an all-star, by the way.
Yeah, Brett's an all-star, by the way.
A lot of all-stars on this cast.
Yeah.
So was Celestina.
Yeah. There's a lot of people with huge upside here. And then there was a part of me that wanted to give Celestina my MVP pick, just because I do think she did play this end game well. It gets her to the end. But I as someone who just values the game, I have to triple down here, and I also have to pick Brett.
The triple threat.
Yeah, the final 5 vote was such a great move for him. You don't see it happen often because there's not people who are confident or comfortable enough to go into a situation like that where it becomes a little bit more dicey, where it also potentially ends your game because you get rid of someone that you see as a more winnable option to go up against. And I think he had one of our best final tribals, got wins. So he really showed all the tools of what people need to be in order to win these games. So with that, I need to give it to Brett, and it gives us our top 3. Also are the top 3 placements of this season. So in 3rd place with 2, tied with 2 MVPs for James and JS apiece, is Celestina with 2 MVPs. Runner up with 3 MVPs is Garret, and with 5 MVPs and our MVP of Iririki Island, it fits just as much to be our wine boy, Brett. Brett is the MVP of Iririki Island. A fitting way to end these recaps. And with that concludes our last recap for Iririki Island. But stay tuned, folks, because before you know it, more seasons are going to be coming up, and we'll be back here recapping it all. I do want to thank Ian and Greg for hopping on for this finale recap. And Greg, where can they follow us if they're trying to find us on social media?
Sure. So we are almost everywhere now. Facebook, you can find us Dynamic Character Productions. Join the group, follow along, interact with all of the posts and with the casts. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and now TikTok, all under @DCP_ORG. Follow along. It's a lot of fun interacting with everyone. And we'll be posting sneak peeks about what's to come. We've got a mini in the pipeline that should be airing just in a couple weeks. And then I'll hand it over to Ian to tell a little bit more about Survivor Monte Carlo that's coming up.
Yeah, so Monte Carlo starts filming in a couple weeks. I'm super excited for it. I'm actually currently doing my rewatch of Exile Island from last year to take notes, improve as a host, because we're here to make the best experience for you guys.
I'll send you my list for you, Ian.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Yeah, if the Exile cast has any critiques, send them through. But I like Jeff Probst. I probably won't read them anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. But like Greg said, interact with the stuff we post. I think not necessarily when we cast a season, but when you interact, we notice, we like interacting with you, whether it's from our personal account or the DCP accounts. That makes a difference to us. I think when we see people interact, we're like, oh, that person must really love the content. We should get them involved in an upcoming game. So yeah, I think it would mean a lot to us for the interaction, for all the follows, all the likes. Yeah.
Yeah, we are a growing brand. This is only the beginning for us. This first year, we filmed 4 minis and a long game. We're going hot into 2022 with another long game with Monte Carlo. We already are getting ideas for future minis throughout this season. So you obviously want to follow along because you watched all this. If you're here watching this, you like the content. So also remember to press subscribe, become a subscriber of our channel. It's free to do on YouTube. Press like so that you can show us that you appreciate these videos, and click that bell for all notifications. So when new videos are put out, you will be one of the first people to know, and you can watch immediately. But with that, that was Greg Langstine. That's Ian Moorhead. I'm Alex Trias. This was Dynamic Character Productions recap of Iririki Island. That's a wrap, and we'll see you next season.